So, hi everyone. Um, my name is Lucas Black. I guess just so I'm clear, Grant, just give a kind of overview of my career, what I do, and kind of what were my influences and how I got to do what I'm doing. Is that what would be most helpful for people?
I think so, yes.
Okay, great. Um, Lucas Black. I'm a parent of an OES. My daughter's a freshman. So my talk will be, I'm involved in international conservation and environmental protection and climate change. My current role is I am the vice president of climate change finance at the World Wildlife Fund. World Wildlife Fund, some of you may know it by it's the panda symbol, the iconic panda symbol. It's an international conservation organization. It's actually the largest conservation organization, I think, in the world. We have about 100 offices. It was formed in 1961. And our mission is to conserve nature and reduce the most pressing threats to the diversity of life on Earth. We work in 6 areas: food, freshwater, wildlife, forests, climate, and oceans. So it's organized around that work. I'm in the climate team. I actually joined World Wildlife Foundation, the World Wildlife Fund, only a few months ago, so I'm relatively new to that organization. I joined it in September. I'm based in Portland. Our U.S. headquarters are in Washington, D.C., but I'm an outposted staff, so I'm here and I travel sometimes to DC. My work is in climate, so my work is in trying to bring funding from various organizations around climate to marry climate together with biodiversity to find funds to address both climate benefits and biodiversity and other nature-related benefits in large landscapes such as the Amazon, or in coral reefs, or in grasslands, the Northern Great Plains grasslands, or in a variety of areas where we work, where we have programs on the ground in mainly developing countries. I was with the United Nations for 13 years before joining World Wildlife Fund and becoming a vice president there. I was a diplomat with the United Nations Development Program, working on nature and climate and biodiversity issues. I was based in South Africa for many years, and then I was also doing projects on the ground in Africa, and then I was in Istanbul, Turkey for many years. My family lived abroad, and before that, I've also lived in India, Cambodia, Brazil, and as well as the US, obviously, and Canada. I think the other thing I would say is I'm also a guest lecturer at Lewis and Clark Law School on climate change. I do that as a pro bono, and I have also done some writing on humans and nature. I have a particular fondness for wildlife and for animals, the relationship between humans and animals. So I've also done some writing on that. And I was, and this last summer, I was a fellow at Oregon State University's Spring Creek Project, which is the Center for the Study of Humans and Nature. So I've done some different things in my career. I was a former Peace Corps volunteer, which I did after finishing college in West Africa. That was kind of my beginning of my career working in developing countries. And I since did various things. I worked also in investment banking, but then moved into the conservation and development field. And as I said, have spent the majority of my life. I worked for the US government for a while, but working for the UN. So I think I have a pretty interesting, there's not that many people in Portland. I think that our UN diplomats have kind of that, it's more in the Washington, DC and places like that. But because of the flexibility now to be able to be based in different places, I'm very lucky that I can work from Portland and for an international organization and do that. So I'm very lucky to be able to do that. And I'm very lucky to be able to have lived in some amazing places and visiting some of the world's, having worked in some of the world's most beautiful protected areas and parks, and also doing a career that's very rewarding in terms of making a difference. But that and in terms of dealing with these issues such as climate change and biodiversity protection, which are such major issues in our society. So that's a little bit of my background. Like I said, I spend a lot of my time, a good deal of my time when I have time, mentoring students um, who have an interest in the conservation field, who want to get into international development. So I've done that for both the university I went to, where I do that, and I try to always be available to young people, either in university or in graduate school, mostly at a graduate school and university interested in a career with the United Nations or a career with conservation. But of course, I'm always happy to speak to OES students um, and also be available as a resource for OES for students that are interested in this field. So Grant, I think that's really what I had to say. And
Can I ask you a quick question?
yes, please go ahead. And then
Sorry.
I'm completely open for any questions you have. That's all I had to
Yeah,
say.
I joined a little late, but I don't know if you mentioned like how you got into that position, or like when did you start thinking about like kind of going through that path, that career path?
Sure. Thanks, Edward. Yeah, it's a bit of serendipity. I had an interest in international work. I took a year off during college, in between my junior and senior year of college, to work in India, to volunteer in India, because of a longstanding interest. And that was at a time when you could do that. You could take a year off between junior and senior year. I really loved it. And then I decided to join the Peace Corps after I got out of college, and that was a really transformational experience in my life. And that I really realized I wanted to do international work. And then why I got into environmental work, it really was just serendipity that as I started working more in international development on a lot of projects, I began to hear about this thing. This was in kind of the late early 2000s, about climate change was becoming more prominent, and there was a lot of changes in the projects I was working in. Climate change was becoming more prominent, and I really began to shift more to working on climate and environment, and it just was something which I was always somebody who enjoyed spending time outdoors. I had a strong connection to, I grew up in California, to hiking in the outdoors, spending time outdoors, a love of wildlife, a love of animals. And so I was just lucky. I got a job working, and one of the things with this is I got a job which led to another job, but and I just fell into it, and it's been ever since I've been doing that, and I've been lucky to do that, and continue to do that. So it was really serendipity, but it really came from spending a couple years abroad, which really piqued my interest.
And how important is it, do you think, for like students to go abroad and kind of explore the greater world and see, and I'm also wondering, like in India, did you like kind of like see directly like those threats to global warming and just worldwide in general, like the issue of global warming?
I did. I think I did. I think, first of all, I think if you want to get involved in this career, I mean, there's many people working on amazing conservation initiatives here in the US. So you don't necessarily have to go abroad. I mean, there's wonderful work being done by the Nature Conservancy and many nonprofits and Oregon Natural Desert Association conserving, habitat in Oregon or working. So you don't have to necessarily do this abroad. But if you do want to work abroad, if you want to work on international conservation, then you really are expected to speak a second language ideally, and have spent some time abroad. So many people are former Peace Corps volunteers, or have spent time abroad, or otherwise, did a few years in something, spent time abroad. As it's often a requirement that you have some international experience if you want to get in the door. Not all the time, but certainly for the UN. And then in terms of what I saw in India, I mean, I began to see, just a lot of huge, when I spent that time in India, incredible pollution and environmental degradation, and issues with water scarcity and deforestation. And it was the beginning of climate change. At that time, I really didn't know too much about it. When I went as a college student, it was still kind of a term not really used. But over time, I mean, I've seen, every time I go back to countries that I used to visit that were relatively pristine, or that not relatively pristine, where I see the impact of climate change growing, either water scarcity, or seeing forests shrinking, or seeing a variety of issues. And So it's very prevalent and it's very direct. And in particularly developed countries, they're the ones hardest hit from climate change. And they're the ones that did the least to contribute to the problem, but are the ones that suffer the most or most vulnerable. Countries in sub-Saharan Africa, countries in Latin America, where water is extremely scarce and they have very little resilience. So you really see it when you visit those countries, but also we're seeing it in Oregon with wildfires and problems here as well. So it's becoming something which is an everyday occurrence.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. If anybody else has questions, but otherwise, if you also, ever want to, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to speak further. So thank you, Grant. I think this is a great thing you're doing, and I hope all of you don't get too overwhelmed. Enjoy your life, enjoy college, enjoy the rest of your OES. Don't have to figure this out for right now, but just something the more you can know, I guess, the better educated about, pursuing courses in college and so forth, or spending time abroad or studying other languages, etc. So thanks so much.